Would you be able to just explain what the movie Rachel is all about?
Simone Bitton, the filmmaker, wanted, I think, to look at the process of investigation within the Israeli military, because there have been questions about investigation and how it happens there. And she was also drawn to Rachel's story. So it's really an inquiry. It's a documentary, a film inquiry into what happened to Rachel on March 16th, 2003, as told by people who were with her and by people from within the Israeli military and Israeli government as well.
Mm-hmm. How old was Rachel when she decided to go to Gaza? That's where it was, right? In
Yeah.
Gaza?
She was about 23 and a half.
Was she living in Washington at that
Washington
time?
State. She was living in Washington State. She actually was living with her older sister and her husband in a home we had there. We were living elsewhere because I had moved for a job. But she was saving money by living with her sister and having to pay rent.
In the house she grew up in,
Yeah.
actually.
For the time before she finally decided to go over to Gaza, were you aware of the organization, ISM, that she was going to be involved with?
Rachel introduced us to ISM, and she pointed me to websites. It was a new organization, really. It was founded, and I learned this later, but it was founded, I believe, in late 2001, 2002, after there had been a resolution in the United Nations to send a peacekeeping force or a monitoring force to the occupied territories after the beginning of the Second Intifada in 2000, which was very violent. There was a lot of violence. And that resolution was vetoed by the United States and by Israel. And as a result of that, people decided to form the International Solidarity Movement. It was Palestinian-led, but founded by an Israeli woman, a Jewish Israeli woman, Neda Goldman, by Ghassan Andoni, who's in the film, who's a professor in Palestine, and by some Americans, one a Jewish American, Palestinian American, who happened to be married to each other now as well.
What was your first reaction when you realized that she was intending on going to Gaza? Was there any kind of dispute amongst the family members?
I just wondered why she couldn't volunteer at a soup kitchen here in the United States.
Right.
I think Cindy started looking on the internet about, isn't there something, our family has some ties to India, couldn't she go to India, you know? We weren't, as I said, living in the same town she was in, so so it took us a little while to figure out how much she had researched it. So it wasn't sort of a light idea at all. She was learning Arabic. She was finding out about the situation, and of course she's 23 years old, so she never asked us for permission. She kind of moseyed into the idea like most kids in college would to such a thing with their parents. You know, she said, "I'm thinking about maybe," and a little while later, "Well, I thought maybe I'll go to, you know, to Palestine." Of course, I was worried. Like I said, I'm a Vietnam vet. I wondered what a military would do with a young woman like that. I got much more frightened when she reported what she was seeing in that military.
You both appear to really be very much up to date on the Middle East situation involving the Palestinians and the Israelis. Prior to her going there, I believe that you had mentioned or heard it, that you weren't at that point in time that aware of it.
Right. No, I think before Rachel decided to do this, I always looked at the Israel-Palestine situation as that problem that would never get fixed. And I think that all my lifetime that was really an excuse, a reason not to pay much attention to it or to think that I could do anything about it. And I now think that's a myth, and that that is a reason for people just to not do anything about it. And it's situation that just cries for us to pay attention and to demand that we take responsibility.
How many festivals has this particular film?
That's a very good question. We haven't been to all of them.
Quite a few?
It's been around the world. It started, I think, it was at the Freiburg Festival in Germany. It's been in Paris. I know that, I'm not sure if it's happened already, but it's going to be in Sarajevo. It was in Buenos Aires. It was at Tribeca in New York.
Do you find that there's a polarizing effect?
Our experience, and we do a lot of speaking on this topic, people, not because we go looking for it particularly, but because people come to us because of our connections to the Middle East now and will ask us to come. I was at a film festival in San Francisco just this past week. It was the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival. And there was a lot of controversy around the film being there, and particularly about me coming and so forth. But I think ultimately the film filled the theater, and there was clearly, I didn't count, but according to reports that I've heard, at least 2/3 of the audience were on their feet at the end of the film and applauding my being there. So I think there's a lot. There's no question. And for some people, it's very, very difficult to have to look at this issue this way.
And forcing everyone to look at the insanity that is present between the Palestinian and Israeli issue. And I don't know, do you personally believe that there is going to be some kind of resolve between those two factions within our lifetime?
I think there has to be. I mean, I think it's the sword that's poisoning a whole lot of, it's one of them anyhow. We've made another, of course, in Iraq. There's so much spin around it. It's so difficult that I think that one of the first things that we have to, as Americans, realize is that we're enabling some of this process. We spend a lot of money. We send a lot of money over to Israel as the largest recipient of American foreign aid, and that's basically military aid. And they continue to occupy the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And it's that occupation that is the source of all this problem. So you can talk about the violence back and forth, and certainly the Palestinians have the ability to do great harm to families. And we know some of those families. We have friends. We have a friend whose son was murdered by Hamas, for instance, and others that were killed either in the military or in bus bombings. We know some of those families on that side as well. But only Israel has the power to occupy. Only they have the power to oppress in that fashion. That's got to end. I'm hopeful with this, the U.S. Obama administration. I'm hopeful because they took it on immediately in the first week of the administration.
Instead of waiting until the very last 6 months of the term in office.
George Mitchell's an able negotiator, but Israel has to come to terms with that. I was just talking about a week ago to a U.S. congressman who said, but there's nobody to negotiate. Usually that's said about the Palestinians. He said, no, you can't go to Israel. They won't negotiate. I think we need to, nothing will happen until we prove we will stand up for things. And I think it needs to be absolutely even-handed that our position there, it shouldn't matter whose names, the nouns shouldn't matter. We ought to be focused on the verbs. What's the action that's happening there? And we ought to oppose the violence. And it shouldn't matter to us which side creates that violence. And that would do a lot. But it has to be real steps. It can't just be talk. So if we say we'll withhold support for either side that creates violence across the green line, the borders there, I think that's reasonable. But we have to take some real steps, or nobody will pay any attention to us.
I just want to say it's commendable how united and how passionate you both are. I mean, situations like this can break families up, but it's very obvious to me that she's very much a part of your union. And thank you very much for bringing this to Traverse City. I mean, it's enriched my life.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time. Yeah.
Get a hug.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks a lot.